Kia ora, everybody, and welcome to Coalesce, and welcome to the final stretch of the day. My name is Joel Labes. I'm a Senior Developer Experience Advocate at DBT Labs, and I'm delighted to be hosting this session, which is called Know Your Worth, Unpacking Business Value Delivered by Data Teams, which is presented by Rifat Majumder. Rif is the Data and Analytics Lead from Education Perfect, which is my old job. He's joining us from Sydney and will be at the in-person event on Friday. So if you're going to be there, then make sure you say hello to him. Rif's got some great ideas and a great framework on how we can evangelize our work better to make sure that stakeholders understand the value that we create as data practitioners. I've got to see the talk a couple of times already, and I'm really excited to let all of you see it now as well. Before we dive in, I want to share a couple of recommendations on how to get the most out of the session. So the first and most important thing is that all of the chat conversation for this talk is taking place in DBT Slack. So it's in the Coalesce Know Your Worth channel. And if you're not part of the Slack, then you still have time to join. Go to getdbt.com/community. And then once you've joined, search for Coalesce Know Your Worth. We encourage everybody to ask questions, to make comments, to make GIFs, to do memes, whatever you want to do at any point in the channel. And then at the end of the session, Rif will be available for a quarter of an hour or so to answer any questions you've got. But again, you can ask those questions at any point throughout. That's enough of me. Let's get started. Over to you, Rif.
Thanks, Joel. Hi, everyone. As Joel mentioned, my name is Rifat Majumder, and I'm the Data and Analytics Lead at Education Perfect, an edutech business that provides content to help educators teach students. My pronouns are he, him, and today I'm going to be exploring the topic of business value delivered by data teams. The aim of this talk is to share a way I've been thinking about this intricate topic and would like to invite others to join in the conversation. A bit about me first. I started my career in government where I had economist colleagues studying high growth businesses from an academic point of view, but I was much more interested in being inside one of these businesses and so made the move several years ago. I've since worked in B2C companies and am currently in a B2B company. I, like many of you, fell into analytics engineering after joining a company that had been using DBT and had a strong focus on data modeling. Before that, I had experience in data analysis, data strategy, and software engineering. My passion is in the intersection of analytics and product, and I really enjoy working with purposeful, product-led businesses. Before we begin with the problem, I want to highlight that when I mention data teams, I'm referring to central enabling teams that are internal to a business, where the customers are the colleagues, rather than teams that are providing direct value to customers external to the business, which we'll call end users for the purposes of this talk. Typically, this value to end users would be provided by product-facing teams. Okay, let's continue onto the problem. I believe the value delivered by data teams are still not clear for many organizations. This makes it challenging to get appropriate investments for data teams to unlock even greater value. Whilst progress has been made and most organizations are convinced of the value of data for decision-making, they still need convincing to build long-term practices and systems that are scalable, efficient, and trustworthy. In a 2021 survey on Fortune 500 companies, only 29% of companies reported achieving transformational business outcomes. It's reported that cultural challenges, not technological ones, represent the biggest impediment around data initiatives. I believe part of the problem is a lack of awareness amongst our stakeholders on how data translates value from collection to impact. What does that mean for us as a group? As data practitioners, we need to get better talking about how value is created by data teams and what is needed to unlock this value. We should care about this as it will better enable our teams and us with the organizational support needed to make an impact. So why is it so hard to measure the value delivered by data teams? Well, data teams impact business indirectly through other teams. This makes it hard to calculate return on investment figures, compared to, say, a product team, where it's easier to forecast revenue figures from a product point of view with a given price point. And as such, there are no established best practices. Now, I don't expect we get asked this so bluntly from our colleagues, but we have to recognize that there is a lot of background knowledge needed in the data field, and colleagues outside of data are unlikely to be as aware as us. Getting understanding and buy-in from leadership and cross-functional stakeholders is crucial. We need to establish common ground so they understand how the data function works and benefits the business. Well, we recognize the challenge of measuring the value of data teams. How can we make it better? I believe it's through accessible and shared language, as well as actively sharing our knowledge with stakeholders. It's also through effective storytelling. Great enabling teams can tell a story about what they've built, what they're building, and how they impact other teams. I've intentionally stayed away from a quantitative approach, as I don't think it's a useful avenue to take with stakeholders as a starting point. Personally, I'm a fan of numbers and was tempted initially, but having talked to peers and senior leaders, it's fraught with imperfect data and many assumptions, which makes it hard for others to align on. In this next section, I share a framework I've been using with my stakeholders and making the connection to value to address the shared language and knowledge sharing approach I mentioned in the previous slide. Before I go through the framework, I'll outline some guiding principles. The first and obvious one is a focus on business value. We should care about articulating value much more rather than shying away from it. It can be harder to do as an enabling team, but it's worth doing so. The second principle is showing data's journey from capturing data to something valuable, giving insight as to what data has to go through in order to become more valuable. Finally, making it accessible and providing a bridge for our stakeholders. As experts in data, we have to be wary of the curse of knowledge, a cognitive bias that occurs when an individual assumes that other individuals have the background knowledge to understand. We should fight against this bias by leaning towards more simple and accessible language. We start with business value use cases, a component of the framework. The intention here is to find categories of use cases that can be used to derive business value from data. First, we have top line. These are activities we undertake to support the growth of our business. Examples include end user and product experience to understand pain points and address these, which can lead to more product-led growth, as well as cross-selling and upselling opportunities. Then we have bottom line. These are activities we undertake to reduce our operating costs as a business. Examples include optimizing our internal processes and marketing efficacy to save on marketing costs. Finally, we have data-enabled products. These are new product offerings that are enabled by data, generated from the business itself, and can be a new form of revenue. It could be selling the data itself or providing analytic solutions for end users. An example in the real world is Facebook Insights that provides reporting and insights from the data it generates itself. So this provides a business value lens on use cases for data. Then I look at, from a high level, the work needed to be done from capturing data to doing something useful with it, calling this the data journey component of the framework. The boxes here represent an activity or practice. The arrows represent a loose dependency. As you can see, I have a natural affinity for a DAG. So let's start from the left, or upstream. Capture it. This is capturing different types of data that are useful for the business. Then we have store it, landing that data and storing that data, typically in our data warehouse. Transform it. We transform the data by cleaning it, applying business logic and modeling it to be ingested for downstream uses. Then we have a fork in the diagram for two activities. At the top, we have analyze it. With our well-modeled data, we can use it for analysis purposes. At the bottom, we have operationalize it, which is a practice of feeding data into a business operation or process for efficiency. This diagram provides an overview for stakeholders on what happens to data behind the scenes before it's surfaced for them, giving them a chance to appreciate the background work needed. Now we connect the dots with the work done to our data and mapping it to the business value use cases. On the right, the dotted line represents how an activity benefits a business value use case. I'll explain going through each of the 4 lines. Starting with the line connecting analyze it and top line use case, number 1. Analysis with rich quality data can help support growth of the business by looking into end user experience in great detail, which can provide insight into product strategy. This ultimately benefits the top line for the business. If we move to the next line, number 2, analysis can also support bottom line use cases, which is about reducing costs. An example is using data to analyze marketing efficacy of the business in order to find opportunities to save on the marketing budget. Next, operationalize it and how it maps to bottom line and data-enabled product use cases. So line 3. Operationalizing can help with the bottom line by giving frontline staff the data they need to make more effective decisions. For example, a lead score to determine the amount of effort to put into an end user, which in turn makes them more efficient and therefore reduces costs for the business. Finally, line 4, the mapping between operationalizing and data-enabled products. As we scoped this talk for internal data teams, we assume we provide value to a product-facing team by operationalizing access and delivery of data for their data-enabled products. These teams rely on our upstream systems to be in working order to realize business value for end user products. An example would be an embedded analytics solution that relies on well-modeled quality data in the warehouse to provide reporting solutions for end users. We now have an overview of how data practices connect to use cases that provide business value. Making this connection can help stakeholders understand the work done in data teams and how they can benefit the business, and also creates a simple language that is shared, a basis for common ground. Next, we go through some scenarios using this framework to see how it could potentially be used to justify certain initiatives. First scenario, we want to justify upgrading an upstream enabling system. In this case, it's in the store it practice, and the example I've chosen is we're investing into our data warehouse so that it can effectively handle large amounts of semi-structured data. For example, event data to get richer insights on end user behavior. This benefits the transform stage as business logic is able to be more sophisticated with more granular data on end users, which flows onto benefits for the analysis and operational practices, and ultimately the business value use cases. An important thing to note here is that whilst an upgrade in the store it process benefits the next process, transform it, work still needs to be done to unlock that benefit and realize value. This goes for all downstream processes following that as well. We can use a physics analogy here, is we're creating potential energy downstream with this investment. In this second scenario, we're looking at addressing tech debt, which is not the most appealing, and have added an extra challenge for us in there by competing against a newly proposed AI project downstream. We want to invest in refactoring models in Transform so that we get faster performance in downstream systems. Let's say we estimate a 20% increase in performance at transformation. With this increase, analysis could benefit by being able to query much more performant data models, leading to faster iterations with their stakeholders on their analysis explorations to support growth. Operationally, it could mean that frontline staff are able to access more up-to-date data faster, which allows them to go faster and ultimately reduce costs. Same for data-enabled products, hence ultimately to the benefit of end users. Both these scenarios depict how the framework can be used to show flow-on benefits from an upgrade in an upstream enabling system to downstream use cases. In this section, I briefly cover some other ways to utilize the data journey component in order to give stakeholders more insight into the skill sets and tools within data teams. This diagram shows, in context of the data journey, where certain data disciplines typically play a part. This can help leadership or senior management, especially when it comes to recruitment, why certain roles are needed. It also provides context on what part of the journey the roles typically spend their time in. This is important as resourcing people is the biggest cost to data teams. It should be noted that with smaller data teams, the roles aren't as specialized, and someone could work and traverse through the entire data journey. In bigger data teams or companies, there's more specialization, with individuals that have experience in dealing with more complex challenges in a given activity or practice. For example, a data engineer in Netflix could just specialize in capturing data. It could be interesting to think about the data disciplines in your organization and what areas they traverse through in the data journey. This next diagram shows data tools in the context of the data journey. There's an explosion of tools in the data space, and it could be helpful to show this to depict where they sit in relation to the data journey, particularly for the purposes of procurement. Now, before I wrap up on the framework, I want to highlight some reflections on it. When talking with stakeholders, we want to also highlight the productivity benefits of data. Currently, this lens is missing in this framework, but it is very important, and I'm looking at ways this could be incorporated. These productivity benefits include efficacy. Data teams improve decision-making through trusted data, a central tenet of a data team's mission, and therefore helps others be more effective in their roles. There's also speed or agility. Data teams help other teams go faster, therefore saving time. Language from this lens is crucial when talking with leadership or stakeholders in order to influence an outcome or making a business case. Another reflection is that key insights from leveraging data well can have huge upsides for a business and transform it drastically, especially if there's implications for the company's overall strategy. The question remains, how do we best communicate this? The framework currently hasn't incorporated important aspects like data management. They could be incorporated into the data journey from start to finish, as they are ever present in all parts of the journey. The question remains how to think about them in context of business value. And finally, the people aspect of data is huge. How do we think about data culture and literacy here? Are they force multipliers to business value from our data initiatives? Or is there another way to think about this? These are questions I'll keep exploring, but for now, I'll wrap up on the framework. As mentioned earlier in my talk, another way to convey value of data teams is through effective storytelling. Without a clear story for showing impact and value, you could end up being overlooked and understaffed. In this section, I briefly touch on some points to help with this. We want to keep the end goal in mind. For example, data quality isn't the end goal, but what does it enable? Let's say in a particular scenario, it could be crucial for a data enabling product that brings value to end users. We want to speak to this end goal and how data quality enables this. Knowing your audience and tailoring for them. What do they care about? What context do they have? What gaps in understanding do they have? How can we tailor it for them? Communicating value rather than effort. Share wins from your customers that are achieving with the help of your initiatives. One of the things with data initiatives is that it's common for there to be long tail of value delivery, where value realized is long after the project has finished. So we have to keep a pulse on these. And naturally, we want to show the impact of initiative. So use data points where available. The last one is about getting out there to tell our story. Not all of us are comfortable doing this. If that's the case, it's about challenging ourselves and leaning towards it. Next steps. So to summarize, we need to focus more on how business value is realized as data practitioners. If we don't have a good handle on it, we can't expect our stakeholders to either. Accessible language and storytelling can help build a bridge with our stakeholders. And this bridge can help us get the organizational support we need to make even greater impact. So let's bridge this gap and start these conversations. Now it's your turn. I've provided a link to my GitHub if you wish to reference any of the diagrams from the framework I shared earlier, and we'll be continuing on further work. Think of ways you can advocate the data team within your own organization. For example, could it be an info session with your relevant stakeholders? What would be the most appropriate thing for your setting? Join the conversation on business value of data teams amongst peers. I found layers of nuance the deeper I thought about this topic. It isn't a trivial topic, but it is important and we should talk about it more. Do you have thoughts on this talk? Or do you have another way to look at this topic? Please share in this talk's channel, which is provided in the next slide. If you have any questions, please ask on the talks channel shown here. And thanks everyone for your time.
Really enjoyed that. The analogy that you drew to potential energy, that just buying a shiny new tool won't solve your problem. You create the possibility for value to be derived, but it doesn't just happen by magic. And also the pointing back to the outcomes from the work, not just like, oh, the team worked really hard on this, or the data is clean now. Like, those are good, but it's like, so what? So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us all today. If you'd like to join the Q&A, then as Riff said, the Slack channel is there. Coalesce Know Your Worth. And we will see you all at the top of the, well, actually time zones. There's the 15-minute ones. Okay. We will see you in about 20 minutes to talk about why you shouldn't do lead scoring in your marketing automation tools with Ben from Culture Amp. Thanks again, Riff.
Thank you. Bye.